It's September 23rd, 2020, and this is a Wednesday night Bible study. I'm glad you're joining me. We are going to be looking at Luke chapter 20, verses 19 through 26, which read, "The scribes and the chief priests sought to lay hands on him at that very hour, for they perceived that he had told this parable against them. But they feared the people. So they watched him and sent spies who pretended to be sincere that they might catch him in something he said, so as to deliver him up to the authority and jurisdiction of the governor. So they asked him, 'Teacher, we know that you speak and teach rightly, and show no partiality, but truly teach the way of God. Is it lawful for us to give tribute to Caesar or not?' But he perceived their craftiness and said to them, 'Show me a denarius. Whose likeness and inscription does it have?' They said, 'Caesar's.' He said to them, 'Then render to Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and to God the things that are God's.' And they were not able in the presence of the people to catch him in what he said, but marveling at his answer, they became silent." Let's talk a little bit about the background here. If you recall, Jesus is not getting along very well with the chief priests and scribes. At other times we'll read Pharisees and scribes or chief priests, but they don't like him. They don't get along very well. What they have suffered under for 3 years of Jesus' ministry is a continual rebuke and admonishment. Remember, they are the unwise and unjust managers. They are the people who are the false shepherds over Israel that God is determined to remove and replace with Jesus. And so they have been at the brunt of Jesus' teachings for quite some time. And it is reaching a point of tension, a breaking point, a tipping point, if you will. They have already devised a plan to execute Jesus and have gotten the authorization, if you will, from the high priest Caiaphas, and even determined to assassinate Lazarus if he should come into the crosshairs as well. And so they have tried to figure out a suitable time and place to do this, but they are being frustrated because the people are always crowded around Jesus. Now, what they have come up with is another plan, a plan B of sorts, and that is if we can turn the will of the people against Jesus, then we can deliver him over to the Romans for execution and save our place. Because you see, if they just assassinated Jesus in the public sphere, in the public eyes, they would turn all the people against them. Remember, what they desire most of all is the attention, the praise, the respect of the people. They live for not just the wealth of Israel, but also for the prestige and honor that comes along with that. And so they have to figure out a way to turn the people against Jesus while at the same time getting rid of him. And so this plan is we'll send somebody in, a spy, if you will, and we'll send him in and feign some sort of allegiance to Jesus and get him to say something in the midst of the crowd of people that will turn them against him. Now, first of all, the immediate background here is that Jesus has just spoken this very harsh parable. And again, these parables are getting more and more plain. It is very easy to see what it is Jesus was saying about them. They perceive that they are the wicked tenants of chapter 20, verses 1 through 18. And Jesus has said this stone that the builders rejected, which he makes clear is him, has become the cornerstone. And so they understand that this parable is about him, and rather than repenting, acknowledging that their hearts are wicked, they can see their own selfishness, the error of their pride. They can see all that, but rather than repent and turn, they desire to kill. All right, and this is the story. I think we go all the way back to Cain and Abel. Right? What's wrong with Cain? So he doesn't have a heart towards God. Right? There's nothing that's particularly wrong with his offering. It's just that he's not offering it in faith. He's not offering it to God as an act of worship. And Abel is. And because Abel's offering is accepted by faith, Cain can't repent and just say, I ought to do the same thing. Rather, he determines to kill Abel. I mean, that's That's crazy, but that's the human heart without God. And so that's where these guys are too. They've decided, I'm not repenting. I'm not going to follow Jesus. I don't care if he is a cornerstone. Let's just kill him. And so that's what they plan to do. And so Jesus, he sees what they're doing, of course, but they send somebody in and say, here's how we really entangle him. Here's how we get him to confess what we really need here. And he just heap on the flatteries, like lay on the flatteries thick. And so this spy comes in and says, you are a teacher who speaks and teaches rightly, and you show no partiality, and you truly teach us the way of God. I mean, surely to goodness they must be thinking, this is what really floats our boat. I mean, if anybody wants to get something out of us, all they have to do is lay the flatteries on thick, right? And so they think this is going to work with Jesus. We'll give him a very difficult question to answer. He'll get all entangled up in all of this, like somebody on a witness stand, and he'll say something that he shouldn't. And so here's what he says, perceiving their craftiness. Show me a denarius. Show me a denarius. Show me a tribute coin. And whose likeness and inscription does it have? Now, Jesus, perhaps we should just say on the level here, plainly, he's promoting this idea that there is something of a dichotomy, right? That there is a difference between secular and sacred, and that we ought not to concern ourselves with paying tribute to a godless emperor who's 1,000 miles away, just so long as we are giving to God the things that are God's. I think there's a great principle of liberty in this, especially for us today, but especially for them. So I guess special for nobody. But that is to say that God is not trying to confuse us. He's not the author of confusion. He's not trying to give us complex situations that are difficult to figure out. Just render to Caesar what is his and to God what is God's. Now, these guys really expected Jesus to say, no, it's not lawful to give tribute to Caesar. Now, here's why. First of all, lawful carries a certain type of weight to it, and that is it lawful for the U.S. government to ask taxes for us, or for us to pay taxes to them? Sure it is. That is lawful. That is the system of government that we have participated in, and even if we didn't, that's the government that there is, and they build us roads and bridges, and we furnish taxes for that's part of the plan. Now, is it lawful for a foreign nation to come in and through the sword take over and then tax the people through duress, right? Through occupation. Perhaps there's a blurry line of lawfulness in that, but Jesus is surrounded by people who are looking and longing for liberation from the Romans, right? So for him to say, no, it would not be lawful, would just be expected, right? That's the next expected thing. Jesus has been ushered into Jerusalem as the Messiah, as the Son of God. Perhaps he is about to step into the role of a Davidic king and overthrow the Romans. That's what everybody is expecting him to say. Now, that's what the Pharisees, I keep saying, I call them Pharisees, the scribes and the chief priests, that's what they expect him to do too. But you better be sure they are not going to let him do it, right? They're going to take that information, they're going to take those eyewitnesses and run to the Roman authorities and deliver Jesus over to him and say, we heard him say that it is not lawful to give tribute to Caesar. That's what I think. I think that's their plot. And Jesus isn't going to let them do either one, right? Jesus isn't going to say yes or no. In fact, Jesus gives us, right, not just evading their question, but Jesus purposes to give us a wisdom and a principle that will be very guiding, not only for the Christians of that immediate generation who will be under Domitian and Nero, but also Christians that are going to be under very different governments down through time. And Jesus has given us some really incredible insights So let's talk about some of the application then of this. I was thinking of Paul, who obviously has his allegiance to the Lord, considers himself, like Peter, I believe, to be a member or a citizen of a heavenly kingdom, who denounces, in a sense, all of the rights afforded to him in this world for a heavenly kingdom. But that's not to say that Paul will not also use or participate in his own political or government rights and responsibilities and whatnot. I'm not saying he cast a vote or absentee balloted or anything like that, but I am saying that when he was seized at one point and they were about to flog him, he said, "Wait, it is unlawful for you to do that because I'm a Roman citizen." Right? So there is a dichotomy between sacred and secular that is okay for us, right? Having our allegiance to one doesn't necessarily mean that we capitulate on all of our other responsibilities. I think the problem, right, and this is really the meat and bones of it, the problem of it is really where the overlapping is, right? Where are the overlaps between our allegiance to this and to that? Jesus wanted to simplify this for us, but there's also a lot going on. So he takes this coin and he says, whose image and inscription is it? Well, it's Augustus's. And the inscription likely said, the divine son, Augustus. Did Jesus mean for us, especially those Jews in the room, who would have been very much aware of the prohibitions against images, and would they have immediately said, well, that's the Imago Dei, that's the image of God? We know it's supposed to be a likeness, a representation of Augustus, but the very prohibition against images is because all people bear the Imago Dei, the image of God. So that circle of Jews, especially them, would have looked at this coin and said, he's the Lord's. The coin, perhaps, even. So there's a wider, more engulfing principle here as well. And there's a reason for this. There's a good and a bad reason for this. But the unfortunate thing is that secular governments don't know lines, right? That's why we have the government that we have, right? Is that governments don't know lines. People who come into power are not usually okay with just enough power to give the people what they need at any point in time. They want more power. And eventually, they want to be worshipped. You can just look through history and see this, by the way. Eventually, they want not just what they should be afforded as a government official, they want what we ought to be giving to God as well. And so Jesus is also encompassing this problem in human history, that there's going to be points at which we come to a line and we realize we cannot render unto Caesar what he wants, because what he wants rightfully belongs to God.